In today's video, I wanted to talk about something that I've been wanting to discuss for a long time, about an incident that happened with me maybe a little more than a year ago, somewhere end of the last quarter of 2024. So I was volunteering for a couple of weeks at a remote farm somewhere in British Columbia. I made a separate video on that about how this couple lives in a Vedic way of living. But what happened there was basically I got to live in a cabin for the duration of this period, and basically work on a farm, build cob chula, as it's called, like a little stove where you can heat and cook, and also harvest vegetables and cook and eat. So basically, it's like till the land, live close to nature, isolated, without contact with civilization. That sort of living, in a very Vedic way of living with cows and there was a goshala and things like that. Anyway, so it was cold, and the first night, the cabin that I was living in, so it had a little stove, a wood stove. So you had to like chop wood and then feed and create a fire. I have no experience with that, and on the first night, my host does it for me and then shows me how to do it. And I'm like, okay, that's very easy. And the second night, I tried to do that myself, and I thought this might be survival 101 basics that a lot of scouts, for example, or a lot of people who camp will know already, probably. But for somebody who lives in the city who's never done that before, it was a completely revelatory experience. Like, I put fuel, I put wood, I put piece of paper, I had lint, I had fire, and it just wouldn't burn. Or even if it caught fire, it would just smoke and die away. And then I spent the night really, really cold. And it could have been dangerous because it's very, very cold. It wasn't like in the minus, but it's definitely single digits. And I had to use a bunch of layers of sheets to keep myself warm. And the next morning, I asked him to show me again. And then I kind of slowly, over the next few days, picked up the skill to be able to light a fire. And then I find that very fascinating because over a period of, a couple of weeks of my stay there, I kind of, not only did I pick up the skill on how to light a fire and keep the fire burning, and also not let it become too hot, which it did at some point, I kind of developed, it's kind of in a bizarre way, a relationship with the fire. This is a very primal element, a force of nature, which is dangerous but also essential. Something that I need to befriend, and I need to be on my side to keep me alive. Otherwise, I'd freeze to death. And I need to make friends with the fire. I learned how to make friends with fire, how to be friends with it, and I would feed the fire and keep it fed, and in turn it would keep me warm and alive. And for anyone who's ever done this, who's lived near a campfire or had a wood fire oven, would know how unlike an electric heater, fire from a direct burning fuel is like wood is more full bodied and very nourishing. And I found that very profound, because then to me, it almost at some point became like a yajna. A yajna is like an offering to the fire. And at some point, before even placing a piece of wood, I would add a little bit of ghee on it, which is traditional when you offer a fire. And I kind of, maybe because of the isolation, I don't know, I kind of personified fire, but it felt like a being to me, like a real being. And it felt like I wasn't just picking up a skill, but I literally developed a relationship with fire. And in a way, fire that is everywhere, the fire that is in my body, the fire that you see in nature around you, in the cells of the body, and as you breathe. If at all you're familiar with yoga or even basic biology, you know that there's a combustion going on in every cell of your body where oxygen is burnt. So there are different kinds of Agni in the body. There is Jatahara Agni, which burns and digests fire, and it kind of brought me into an intimate alignment and relationship with the primal element. And I realized how cut off. And the same thing with land. So every day I would go dig up my food, like potatoes and carrots and greens and so on that I need to eat, and then go back, cycle back to my cabin, and then cook and eat that for lunch, and some fruits for breakfast and things like this. So it wasn't like buy off the shelf food or go to a restaurant and order. Here I was literally, except for the grains, of course, and the water, I was literally digging up my own vegetables and cooking them and keeping myself alive. So that brought me into sort of an intimate alignment, contact with food and earth. It changed my relationship, at least temporarily, with food as well. Now, this may not sound like a big deal, but I can promise you that it is. Because when you live a normal, conventional life in the city, in a day-to-day living, we pay money and get vegetables. We pay money, get food. We go and order and somebody prepares them. And we just eat. And your body and your being is so cut off from the nourishment that it receives, and there is no direct relationship apart from a transactional commercial one. You turn the switch on and the light comes or the heater comes or the AC comes. So somehow, not only has our relationship with the things we consume and the things that nourish us been reduced to a transactional one, it has also resulted in a complete cutting off of connection with nature, right? And I was really grateful for those 2 weeks where, despite a lot of struggle, my being came in contact with directly nature, and I learned to, I wouldn't say tame it, but build a relationship with it and make friends with it, and which in turn, it was like a symbiotic relationship. I think a lot of people need to have this experience to really realize what we have lost. And this reminds me of a book that I read long ago, which I highly, highly recommend, a book called Spell of the Sensuous by David Abram. David Abram is a cultural ecologist and a geophilosopher and the author of a few books. Anyway, I'll let you go figure out the bio. I'm not going to read the whole bio. But then he made a very important point somewhere in the book, and I don't remember the exact point, of how back in the days, human beings interacted with nature, because that was your environment, that was your milieu, and you had to do that to know your surroundings to survive. And then as people formed, as agricultural came and people formed communities, and then you had wider interactions and connections and relationships with other human beings, okay? But now in the modern age, not only have we cut ourselves off from regular interaction with other beings and the nature, we have put our connection into neutral, sterile things like gadgets and electronics. And now we interact almost solely through other people, as well as food and our environment, through the medium of technology. We are enmeshed in a technosphere and not really a biosphere, a primal biosphere, which is not only cutting us off, but also has a lot of really bad consequences in the way our nervous system and our being develops. I'm sure there's enough scientific data and research out there as to why that is bad. Maybe I can discuss that in another video. But I just wanted to make a quick video on sort of highlighting how we have put ourselves in a very dangerous situation without really realizing it, and how it's very important for people to not just take a walk in nature, but also maybe take off your shoes, go and ground yourself in nature and hug a tree. This might seem very corny, to live in nature, to spend as much time as possible observing, smelling. You saturate your visual, mental, oral, and what is the word for smell? One of those things. That everything, imbibe that, saturate all your senses with nature, observe and make connection and reconnect with it. I think this is something that everybody must do, especially children, and it's quite transformative. Because it's also alive, because far from being a very sterile, neutral, inert, dead background, there, just there for us as human beings to exploit. It's far from that. It's like a very alive, like a vibrant, teeming with, I would say, NHI, non-human intelligence field of environment of which we are a part of and meshed in it. And there's a symbiotic relationship. It gives us and we give it. And we kind of break that and come out and isolate ourselves. And I think that's truly damaging in ways that we haven't even begun to consider and understand. And if you're interested, you can go back and check that other podcast that I did with the people and showed you how they actually live. But yeah, so that's that. Bringing ourselves, being into intimate alignment with the primal forces of nature, especially the elements like fire, okay, and water, especially fire. Well, I say water because I'm not really a beach person or a pool person. I don't like to spend a lot of time in water, which I'm planning to change. And earth, go out there and play with mud, get your hands dirty with dirt on earth. Yeah, that's it. Until another video, see you soon.